All righty. So today we are interviewing Dr. Bruce Wapen.
Wapen.
And I am really excited for this because you've been a medical doctor for over 40 years in emergency medicine since retired, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in addition to his conventional medical background, he's trained extensively with naturopathic doctors, herbalists, and he's bringing a truly integrative perspective to health. He's been on the front lines of medicine and has a unique vantage point on what we've seen unfold over the past few years. So my first question is, what were your initial thoughts when COVID first emerged? Like, do you recall the moment you began to feel the virus was not a natural virus?
Well, that wasn't my first impression. My first impression, of course, was that it was a natural virus and that we had a truly aggressive pathogen which needed to be addressed with appropriate medications. And certainly we were seeing that in the emergency department. So that was my initial impression. Then over time, only over time did it become clear that this was a manufactured pathogen. And then I had to deal with that reality.
At what point do you recall that you realized that?
Gee, it was probably a year before it was really clear to me. And that was not my own independent research. That was because I listened to people who are interviewing the real researchers in this. Dr. Robert Malone, who was the doctor behind mRNA technology.
Right.
The likes of Greg Hunter, who brought numerous physicians and researchers on and interviewed them about what really was going on. And then more recently, I read a book by the Bragans, who was called COVID-19, the global predator, and which detailed every aspect of the research that went into the manufacture and distribution of this bioweapon.
Wow. So why is the COVID-19 virus different than a natural virus?
Yeah, so the COVID-19 virus is basically a coronavirus. Coronavirus is what causes the common cold. So it has, in that natural form, relatively little morbidity. It also can produce more serious, in particular, respiratory infections. So there's a gradation of the pathogenicity of coronaviruses. But if you then undergo gain of function research and implementation, that's a whole different story. So now you take a virus which is not a bad actor and make it into a bad actor in a laboratory. And that's what they did by manipulating the spike protein on the coronavirus, which made it more infectious and more pathogenic. That is, it caused more medical problems within the individual. Wow.
I remember hearing that they had spliced it with like HIV. Is that like debunked, or is it?
Yeah, I've read that too. And not just HIV, but numerous other little snippets of genetic material from other animals, including insects. And I don't know. That doesn't seem to be the main thing. The main thing is the pathogenicity of the spike protein, one, and two, the fact that it is a gene editing technology which makes the recipients, at least of the vaccine, not necessarily of the infection itself, but of the vaccine, makes you manufacture the very pathogen which is causing all the problems, which is the spike protein.
Right. So like, how long, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but how long after vaccination are people manufacturing that spike protein and essentially shedding it? Does it go in a cycle, and do they continue to do that? Will they continue to do that forever, or is it more prevalent after vaccination, or have you found any?
So there is no off switch.
Yeah.
So it's potentially forever. And what it produces has been labeled the persistent spike protein syndrome, the PSP. Right? So with the PSP, individuals who are making the spike protein continue to make it, and it continues to wreak havoc in the body. And so go ahead. Do you have the next question, or I can go on?
No, go on with that.
All right. The spike protein is, first off, it's a protein. Proteins are made up of clumped together amino acids. This particular spike protein gains access to cells. It floats around in the bloodstream, and it gains access to cells through a receptor called the ACE2 receptor, angiotensin receptor. And once in the cell, then it reprograms the cell to make more of itself. The main problem with it is intensely inflammatory.
Okay.
It induces inflammation. Inflammation is a problem for all diseases in the body. And if you start inflaming the liver, you get hepatitis. You start inflaming the lining of the blood vessels, you get clot formation. You start inflaming the heart, you get myocarditis.
Right.
And that's how it causes its morbidity and mortality.
Okay. Makes sense. And I feel like we're seeing so much of that, especially in young people, which is really sad. I think at some point they were even trying to normalize heart attack and stroke in young men, like 14. And,
yes.
I don't know if you remember that. So what makes the spike protein concerning in the body is its ability to continue to replicate, and it doesn't have an off switch. How does that affect somebody's body with other viruses? So when another virus comes in, say the flu, and their body is really focused on just making that spike protein, and I heard that with getting that vaccine, it kind of shuts down your innate immune system to other viruses.
Yeah, so that's true, that there is a tremendous deprecation of the abilities of one's immune system to continue to function adequately after having been vaccinated specifically. Now, exactly the mechanism for that, I'm not sure, but that seems to be the case. Earlier, you referred to this death among young people. That was called SADS, sudden adult death syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, it became kind of normal for young people to be dropping dead on the ball field.
Mm-hmm.
And that has all to do with the inflammation engendered by the spike protein.
Right. Okay. Let's see, more notes here. Oh, yeah. So what would you suggest for someone who's experiencing symptoms that might be related to spike protein exposure, not from the vaccine, but from shedding?
So shedding, that's a very interesting concept. And the companies that made the vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, knew that the materials that were now being made in the body, the spike protein, would shed to other people. And unfortunately, that means that none of us is really safe, even those who have not been vaccinated, mm-hmm. because others can shed on us and give us the same pathology that they got from just getting the vaccine. What was your question again? Remind me.
So, if we get symptoms from shedding,
yes,
are we now going to have the same cycle of spike proteins in our body as a vaccinated person? Or is that something that we can kind of get rid of?
I think we can get rid of it because we've not had our genome modified in order to continually produce the spike protein.
Okay.
So it's a matter really of getting rid of it. Now you're talking about neutralizing the spike protein, destroying the spike protein, neutralizing the spike protein, or neutralizing the ACE receptor that allows the spike protein entry to the cells.
Right.
And that's where you get into then a plethora of supplements and other chemicals which are able to do that. And so if you're concerned that maybe that your body has spike protein and that your body is not as normal as it used to be, the test to look for that is called a D-dimer. So this is not common knowledge. D-dimer, D-dimer. It's a readily available test that we do in the emergency department all the time if we're looking for inappropriate clot formation. So what the spike protein does is foster inappropriate clot formation.
Okay.
And if you have an elevated D dimer with no other reason for having one, it's indicative of you're having spike protein on board.
Wow. Okay. That's really interesting. And I was listening to somebody speak the other day. I think it was the videos that you sent me. I think she was a part of that conference. She was talking about nicotine, like pure nicotine, and how it can actually help with turning off, or like with what you were saying, the A2 receptors.
Yeah, so that's also very interesting. I've heard nicotine used more in reference to combating snake venoms, which are also supposedly, this is talked about extensively by Brian Ardis, snake venoms that are in the vaccine.
Wow.
So, and I don't know, I don't know enough about it to have a real intelligent comment, but in fact, after hearing about that and hearing that nicotine gum can cancel that, I went ahead and got nicotine gum and just had it sitting in my cabinet.
I love it. I think I'm going to try some too. That's pretty incredible. I love all the like alternatives that are coming about from the research that these alternative doctors are doing. And it's been really interesting to like just learn about. So we had somebody specifically ask if they received a blood transfusion from a vaccinated donor, is it possible to detox from that kind of exposure?
Yeah, it's very possible to detox from these exposures.
Okay.
And so the two major things, well, I think the thing that I do, I'll tell you what I do. I use an enzyme called nattokinase.
Yes.
So nattokinase is made from the fermentation of soy by
the natto bean, yeah. The natto bean? Natto bean?
The natto bean, soybean,
right,
by a bacillus called Bacillus natto. And you wind up with an enzyme which helps to prevent clotting. So it's not, and it does it in two ways. It inhibits a chemical reaction which causes inappropriate clotting called PAI-1, PAI-1. So it inhibits that, which you don't want. And then it engenders the production of TPA. TPA is the drug that we use in the emergency department to bust clots. And you make that in your body. You make it endogenously. Endogenous means made in the body as opposed to exogenous, which means brought in from outside the body. So tissue plasminogen activator, TPA, is made in your body to dissolve clots. You obviously need to make clots so you don't bleed to death when you cut yourself, but you need to get rid of those clots afterwards. So nattokinase helps you get rid of inappropriate clots and stops the production of inappropriate clots. Well, I take it twice a day, every day.
Are there any other supplements that you take? Like if somebody had a limited budget but wanted to have a very solid protocol, what are like the top 3 supplements that you would recommend that they take?
Yeah, vitamin C would be the second one that I would say. And high doses, the recommended doses these days for vitamin C is 6,000 to 10,000 milligrams a day. And the best way to take it, if you're not going to use it intravenously, if you're sick, you want to get it intravenously. But if you're not sick, or if you're minimally sick, you can take it. The best way to take it is liposomal. So liposomal is vitamin C wrapped in an envelope of lipoproteins that enables it to get through the bowel, into the bloodstream, and into the cells much more efficiently.
Wow. That's a good explanation on liposomal.
Yeah. And I'm just quoting Thomas Levy, MD, JD, who's one of the gurus of board certified cardiologist and a guru and disciple of Linus Pauling. It talks about vitamin C all the time. He says the best formulation, and I have no affiliation with this company, is from a company called Livon, Liveon, Livon, liposomal vitamin C, and that's what I use.
So nattokinase, liposomal vitamin C, and then what else? What would be your third?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Let me just look at.
I know there's so many.
There's this whole list. Yeah.
And he's also has a list that he can provide. So for anybody who's interested.
So the other one for breaking down the spike protein is bromelain.
Okay.
Bromelain is another enzyme derivative of pineapple. The problem with it is that it needs to be taken on an empty stomach. And so now, I don't know how many supplements you take. I take a bunch, and so I take it twice a day with meals. And now you guys, oh, what am I not taking anything and no food and I can't snack? And now I'll take my bromelain. It becomes problematic.
Yeah.
That's not true with nattokinase. You can take it with food.
Okay, got it. So a little bit more planning if you're taking that. And then as far as shedding, like if you went to Disneyland or you went to a big indoor concert, or maybe you have a partner that had the COVID vaccination, you're worried about being intimate with them. As far as like, is it all detox afterwards, or is there ways to actually shield yourself and protect yourself and prevent shedding onto you?
Yeah, there's no way to protect yourself.
Okay.
And it goes beyond just a spike protein. We're talking now about nanoparticles that are being shed by people because of the vaccine. And this is a whole other talk because we're kind of specifying here, we're talking about spike protein. But I'm concerned about detoxing from other nanoparticles that are being shed on me. And to do that, I use EDTA, ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid, which is a chemical that's been used ever since the 1950s to detox people from lead. It can be given intravenously, it can be given sublingually, it can be given transdermally, intrarectally, and it's a chelating agent. And it binds to inappropriate metals and particles in the body, and I use it on a regimen, a protocol, throughout twice a month. Month.
So you're only using it for like a period of time and then you stop.
Yeah, because it takes out some good minerals along with the bad. It was initially discovered because of the spray painting of lead-based paints during World War II in shipyards on military vessels and transport vehicles. And people got lead poisoning, and they found that EDTA got rid of lead poisoning. They also found that those people who previously had angina, also pronounced angina, because of heart disease, got rid of their angina. So they go, whoa, what's going on here? Well, it took the calcium out of the blood vessels. So it gets rid of calcium for you. It gets rid of mercury and lead and antimony and arsenic and cadmium, which are the 5 heavy bad metals. But it also gets rid of some of the good stuff. So you don't want to use it continuously, or you're going to deplete yourself of important minerals. So I do it 3 days, twice a day, 3 days, days 1 through 3 of the month, and 3 days, 15, 16, 17 of the month. And certainly if I'm exposed to what I think is a bunch of shedding, like I'm in a closed room with a whole bunch of people who are all vaccinated, I'll do it then.
The next day or something.
When I get home.
Do you experience any symptoms, like any detox kind of hercs, like reaction symptoms when you started using the EDTA?
No, I didn't notice any symptoms at all.
Okay, so it's very gentle then, you'd say, like in the sense that it doesn't make you feel crummy.
Yeah.
This is kind of like, this wasn't on my list of questions, but I'm so curious. Like they say that parasites come in to clean up a toxic environment. And there seems to be a really big issue with parasites and people having an overload of parasites post-COVID. Like it feels like this whole parasite thing kind of blew up. And and I don't know if you know anything about this, do you think that the reason why people have more parasites is because the parasites are coming in to clean up the spike proteins and the onslaught of the nanotech? And because don't they take on heavy metals in some cases?
Well, okay.
It's kind of
I don't agree that there's an uptick in the number of parasites in people. B, parasites by definition are bad for you. They don't help you. If they help you, they're symbionts. There's a symbiotic relationship. They're parasites. They only do bad things for their own benefit. You want to read about this. There's a whole detox program initiated by Lee Merritt, MD, all about parasites.
Lee Merritt.
Merritt, yeah. But I'm not really, I'm concerned about parasites. And if you want to get rid of them, ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine get rid of parasites. Ivermectin in particular is easy to use, and I have done parasite cleanse with ivermectin. But I don't think there's an uptick with whatever went on with COVID, and I don't think that's the primary problem we have.
Do you think that most people have parasites?
I think probably most people have parasites. We in America, we think, oh, we're so clean here, we don't have. That's Central Africa. No. Parasites are everywhere, and if your immune system is working well, you keep them in check. But it deprecates your health in the long run. But you're not even aware of it because you're not bleeding. You don't get high fevers. You're just not aware of it. You've got them.
Yeah. So ivermectin, then what would be like your favorite binder? Is that the EDTA? Is that a binder? Or would you use like charcoal or like, I know people like different things.
EDTA is not a binder. Charcoal is a binder. So
Right.
you're talking about now swallowing charcoal in order to bind things in the gut that you don't want to be there.
Okay.
But
like with taking the ivermectin, because when they die, the parasites die, don't they let out like can't they let out an onslaught of toxins in your body? Like,
no, because that would imply that the parasites themselves were loaded with toxins, which isn't necessarily the case.
Okay.
The bodies of the parasites themselves are toxic. So you need to get rid of the parasites. And there may well be, if you're heavily infested with parasites, there may well be a reaction when you get rid of them, just because of the load of their dead bodies.
Right.
I don't think most people would have that problem. Okay. And I think a lot of people have taken ivermectin without that sort of reaction.
Right. What about turbo cancers with the show? Like, what do you have any insight on that? Have you done any research on that? Like, what's your thoughts with that? Yeah.
So this is a manifestation of the degradation of your innate immune system because of the vaccine, not because of the coronavirus pandemic, but because of the vaccine itself. And so if you undermine your immune system, which the vaccine does, you then open yourself up to those diseases which your immune system keeps in check. And among them would, of course, be cancers of all kinds. And if you're no longer keeping cancer, and we produce cancer cells every day, 10,000 or more a day.
Wow.
They're identified individual cells among the trillions of cells we have in our body. You produce 10,000, and the immune system recognizes them as non-self and gets rid of them. Now the immune system doesn't recognize it as non-self and allows it to proliferate, and that's where the problem comes in.
And do you think that that's because the body is so focused on making the spike proteins or identifying,
Yeah,
like
so that's a good
about
question.
that?
What is the origin of the undermining of the immune system? And I don't know the answer. I don't think it's just because it's focused on making the spike protein. There's other stuff going on that it accounts for it, but I'm not sure what it is.
Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to add for people,
Yeah, so there are a number of sources which are very good to watch or listen to. Today, just synchronistically, this morning, Greg Hunter, USAWatchdog.com, interviewed Karen Kingston. So Karen Kingston was for years, worked for Big Pharma to meticulously go through all of their documents to make sure that the wording was spot on. And when she then realized that the documents that Pfizer and Moderna published actually talk about the fact that this is a gene editing technology and that it is made to hurt you, not help you, she went over to our side and got completely banned for any further work with Big Pharma. So that interview is just today. If you want to listen to the nitty gritty of the details on all about the spike protein and all about the injections, today's interview, Greg Hunter with Karen Kingston, will fill you in. I downloaded a couple of things that were just interesting. I mean, you remember that they absolutely said, "Oh, this will not alter your genome. This will not genetically change you." What's a lie? So this is from Sang Chen, Vice President and Chief Scientific Officer of the Rare Disease Research Unit at Pfizer. The website states that Pfizer's mRNA injections are gene editing nanotechnologies that produce editing proteins such as spike protein to modify the genome. So there they are caught in a lie.
Yeah.
It's right in their documents. You just need someone like Karen Kingston to read through the hundreds of pages of documents and say, okay, here's the key thing, here's the key thing.
Right. So that's what makes the vaccine so different than like the vaccines.
They're not vaccines. So
they're not vaccines.
they're not vaccines. So vaccines are by definition something that will stop transmission or reduce or stop pathogenicity within the body. And the vaccines don't do either. They don't stop transmission and they don't lessen the degree of the infection. So they're not safe and they're not effective.
Right. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
It's all a lie. Everything you were told is a lie. And the worst part of it is it was designed by DARPA. Mm-hmm. So the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency at Chapel funded the research for this bioweapon technology at Chapel Hill, North Carolina, under the direction of a guy named Ralph Barrick. And then it's illegal to do bioweapons research in the United States. So when they got to a certain level, Fauci said, oh, we got to get this offshore. So they sent it over to the Wuhan lab under a lady who's called Batwoman. Her name is Shi Zhangli. And that was done by a guy from here in America named Peter Daszak. And over there, it got finalized into the bioweapon that it is. Mm-hmm. So the COVID infection was a bioweapon. The vaccine is a bioweapon. Mm-hmm. And it was done by our military. So what does one draw the conclusion from? What conclusion does one draw from that? We live under the dictates of our military, and it's trying to kill us.
Do you feel like Fauci and like certain departments that were like, do you feel that they were infiltrated by China or by like a foreign party and they were trying to destroy America in a sense, and that these people are getting paid, to do so offshore trusts and all that?
There's that element to it. Mm-hmm. And actually the Reagans go into that in great detail in their book, COVID-19. But it's more than that. Mm-hmm. I don't think that China can own our military unless the military wants to be owned. Mm-hmm. And I think our military, this now gets into the globalism and the global mm-hmm. conspiracy and who's really behind it and why a depopulation agenda. This isn't just about America. This is about the whole world.
Right.
This is a depopulation agenda.
Right.
So now we're at a spiritual level. Right. We're trying to alter humans from humans into non-humans, and the ones who actually and kill off a whole bunch, and the ones that survive are making it into cyborgs. Whoa. Well, that's, that's way beyond just China.
Right. It's like satanic. Like it's
satanic.
Yeah. It's a very dark, that's, and it's interesting because I was just talking to Sarah Renee yesterday, my friend, and she and I were talking about how because this virus is man-made, right, and used as a bioweapon, that the only way, and the technologies that they injected into people, and people are worried about, oh, I got it, and I'm so scared. And I always say, like, the only thing that could heal you and truly rid your body of it is like supernatural, right? And for me, that's Jesus Christ. And, and you might disagree with that. But like, there's no way to really detox from it, right? Once you get the injection.
Well, there's no way once you get the injection to detox.
Is there a way to support your body at least? And like, can they do the same protocol as the people who just experience shedding?
Yeah. So we just ran through, it's hardly a protocol, but you need, if you want to support your immune system, this is all about supporting the mm-hmm. immune system. The biggies are high doses of vitamin C, adequate dose of vitamin D. You need to measure your 25 hydroxy vitamin D level in the laboratory and find out it ought to be between 60 and 90, not 30 nanograms per deciliter, but 60 to 90.
Right.
So I take 10,000 IUs a day of vitamin D.
Right.
10,000. And I'm not a big guy. I weigh 155 pounds. So big people might need a lot more than that. The minerals, zinc and selenium. Mm-hmm. So those four things are absolutely essential to your immune system and your health. So everybody should be taking that. And then if you want to bind up the nanotechnology, now we're talking about EDTA.
And that's something that he's not giving medical advice. Everybody should obviously consult with their own practitioners if they have concerns or they're interested in hearing more.
I'm telling you what I do.
What he does, yes.
What I do. The problem is, of course, going to your medical practitioner, he or she will be clueless,
right,
unless you go to a functional medicine.
Absolutely. And I'm just saying that to cover our asses here. So excuse my language. But, so like then EDTA pretty regularly then for people who have had the vax. And maybe taking the nattokinase
I think
regularly?
EDTA regularly for everybody because it's in the, we're breathing this stuff in. It's in, or they're putting mRNA technology into the food, into the plants. It's in lettuce now. It's in animals. So there's no way to escape this. This is the mark of the beast. There is no way to escape this.
Right.
So you need to be doing proactive things on a daily basis.
And a part of that's prayer in my house.
There you go.
But yeah, okay, this is really interesting. This is a lot to digest, you know? And back to the spraying of it, and they're putting it in the air and we're breathing it in the air. That's going to be another episode on
that's where chemtrails come in.
Yeah, because I know we have a lot of people interested in learning more about chemtrails. So we're going to have that episode next. If you guys are interested in